it is my pleasure to introduce to you back to the stage to talk about the future of the industry, Mr. Dave Liniger and his guest, real estate coach and trainer, Brian Buffini.
Playing that Irish stuff. Thank you. That was for you.
That was for me. Okay. We're running a little bit over, but we're not going to keep you from your cocktail party, I promise. Brian and I discussed what we would like to throw out to you for some ideas. And I think the first thing is find out from you where you think 2015 is going.
It's going good. I didn't realize we're the only thing standing between these people and alcohol, so that's not a good spot to be in, is it?
They're going that direction. They're not going to run over us.
That's good. We have a good market, right? How many of you are making money? Sound like a bunch of morticians. How many of you are making money out there? So, last year, 5 million units in the States, great year in Canada. No year in the 90s did we sell 5 million units. It's the 5th best year in history. It's just, you're not going to hear that in many places, and this year looks very similar. So people are buying, people are selling. I do, after hearing your talk earlier on, I now have to expand my training to support part-timers and losers. That's a new it's a new market segment I'm going to start pursuing. That's great. But other than that, there's a lot of money to be made out there.
Yes, there is. So one of the biggest problems we hear about is a tight inventory.
Yeah.
What are you telling your clients on what to do about that?
Well, I think, look, here's a question. How many of you are in the business 5 years or more? Let me see your hands. Okay. And so we have a certain way of doing business, right? We get a buyer, and we're used to going to the MLS, and you go search, and you go show, and, there's not as many available, and there's multiple offers. And what happens is I hear this refrain, there's no inventory, there's no inventory, there's no inventory. So to me, the thing about it is, there's all the inventory in the world. There's no listings. Did you guys hear what I just said? There's plenty of freaking inventory. There's houses everywhere. They're just not listed. So if you have a buyer, our mantra to our clients is go create your own inventory. Go create your own inventory. Don't get caught in the passive mindset. I searched. We didn't find anything. There's multiple offers. If you have a buyer, you know what they can afford, you know where they want to live, and there's not a house available in that market, go find it. There's 250 homes in that neighborhood. Here it is. Mail them. Here's another concept, a brand new technology they've just introduced called a telephone. Why don't you try calling them? Why don't you send them a note? Why don't you go into the neighborhood and say, I have a legitimate buyer. If you're interested, I'd just like to come and show the buyer. This is not a solicitation for a listing. I'm interested in showing a buyer a home in your neighborhood, and if you happen to be one of those folks interested in selling, I'd love to show them your house. Similarly, if I have a listing, and how many of you have had a listing that sold pretty quick? Let me see your hands. You need to market the daylights out of it. Hey, you know what? Guess what? We just sold the Robinsons, your neighbor's home, in 4 days, and we got 12 offers. Unfortunately, those 11 people who want to buy and live in this neighborhood, there's no homes for them to buy. Are you considering moving? And these are radical techniques, Dave, right? I mean, no one's done anything like this in 30 years. This is hashtag freaking awesome, isn't it?
Yeah. Anything about our last year in the recovery that surprised you?
One thing, which is I don't understand why they're not building as much as they need to. In the States, we need 16 million new units in the next 10 years, which is 1.6 million homes, condos, places to live in each year, and we dropped down to about 550, 600. We're about 1 million units a year right now. So there's not a lot of financing available for small scale or large scale developers, and the developers are being somewhat cautious. So here's what you need to know about the inventory side of things. It's going to be tight for a while. And in Canada, you got a lot of immigration, so you got another reason why your market's tight. So you got to understand, you got to be creating your own inventory. You got to have that mindset going forward. You got to create your own inventory. They're not building enough. It doesn't look like they're gonna for a while. The regulations aren't helping in the development side of the business. I think they're going to be a few years behind. So that one kind of I wish they were building more. I think it would be great for the economy. I think it'd be great for real estate. I think when contractors have money, they spend it. Everybody wins. But that's the one that's not so great.
That's a toughie. A topic that gets discussed a great bit is the different generations.
Yeah.
The baby boomers, the millennials,
Yeah.
the X-gens. Well, how do you coach your people to deal with these different backgrounds, cultures, or whatever?
So, I mean, there's all these conversations, and I've done all these studies, and I've done some work. We did a joint study with Wells Fargo a couple years ago, spent $500,000 doing all this research on that stuff. And we found all kinds of great data. But I think the first thing we need to understand is that all these folks are people. And people want to buy from people, and people want to look in your eye and trust you. We were talking about it earlier on. So I'll give you an example. One of our top coaching clients just sold a house to the number 3 guy at Facebook. Okay? So you'd think the Facebook guy would be all tech all the time. Well, here's what he did. He got a personal referral from someone he knew who told him about this gal. He met with her, he interviewed her. Now, he said before he interviewed her, he checked her out on Facebook. He wanted to see that she was legit. He took it a step further because he wanted to see if they had things in common and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, he got a personal referral to someone he trusted. He has now sent her 3 referrals. She's gotten $6.5 million worth of contracts from a personal referral and followed them up with personal notes and so on and so forth. The technology is big. The one thing about the millennials from the studies we've done, this is the change for us old-timers in the business, is they've grown up with sales pitches. They've grown up with infomercials. A good friend of mine just passed, Phil Paxson. He was the creator of the home shopping channel, the shopping network. How many of you have frequented the home shopping network? He said 20 years ago they'd put something on TV, it'd sell. They'd get huge responses. And what's happened is these younger folks, they've grown up watching infomercials, they've grown up, and they smell a sales pitch a miles away. So it used to be in real estate, hey, come on into the office if you're a buyer. And now they're like, I don't want to get a sales pitch, so you might have to meet them at a coffee shop. Their understanding of response time is different than ours. So if they reach out to you through any form, whether it's phone, whether it's through Facebook, whether it's through an online lead, they expect you to respond quick. So if you have a team or an assistant, you've got to have quick response times. You've got to get back to these folks quick. You've got to communicate with them. And you can't use the schmaltzy sales pitches. You've got to be sophisticated. You got to communicate with them. These kids have been raised on sales pitches. Okay, so you got to build relationship, and that's kind of where a lot of the younger folks are tuned in.
Sure. And you're speaking of teams. About 10 years ago, you and I did a very successful team event.
That's fun.
I think we had close to 2,000 people.
Yep.
And then the bottom fell out of the business.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of teams disappeared. What do you think is happening with teams now?
Sure. So teams, I think, are starting to reform, and I think it's a good thing. I think the structure is the same. We talked about the 5 different team models and the structures of how to handle off a lead and how to communicate with the customer and how to pay them and so on and so forth. So I think structurally teams are the same today as they were 10 years ago. I think there's one major difference, which is younger folks are getting into real estate now, and they see being part of a team as a career path. So in the past, how many of you have teams or had a team or can't remember, you were part of a team? Yep. So you drove past a team. So in the past, a lot of times, those of us that had teams, you had an agent who was a buyer's agent. There was a pretty good chance when they got good, they were going on by themselves. Does that make sense? And now there's a lot of these younger folks, some of these millennials that are actually coming out of college. They've seen the concept of a team and are becoming a buyer's agent, and they intend to stay one. And some of these younger folks, they're not as motivated or as ambitious economically. They have other things they want to pursue and so on and so forth, and they like the idea of being a part of a team. They know they're not going to make quite as much as if they're an agent in their own right. They don't want the responsibility. And so we're seeing a lot of that. So team structurally is the same, but we're seeing little tweaks and changes with who's coming on board. And so be watching for that. A lot of kids coming out of college, a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm, pretty sober-minded kids, and they want to be part of a team. And they'll actually be worth your while to really train because they're going to stay with the team a long time.
Good.
I thought that was great.
I thought it was great too.
I thought they'd burst into applause.
They're tired.
Huh?
They're tired.
Do we need to bring back the kid who sings? Do we need to do that?
Did you notice that we weren't the act to follow
I
her.
know. That was very smart. I do love you.
Yeah, I know.
That
Never
was good.
follow a kid or an animal.
No, my
act.
God. I had to follow you after you came out in a freaking elephant one time. That was not fun, by the way.
That was a long time ago.
It was. That sucker left some large deposits backstage.
So since the internet has not replaced us, and we know we have a value, what do you tell a coaching client about how to express that value?
Yeah.
Because so many of our people don't know how to say that.
They do not. And I think this big question. I think it's a big question for the agent. I think it's a big question for the local brokerage. I think it's a big question for your brand. I think it's a big question for the industry. And I believe the difference between top producing agents and agents that struggle is the ability to communicate value. I believe if you're struggling having your commissions cut, it is not because your buyer or seller is cheap. It's a challenge with being able to articulate value. And I'd give you 3 contexts on this. You got to be able to articulate your own value as an agent. You got to be able to articulate the value of your brokerage. And you got to be able to articulate the value of your brand. You know, these guys spend all this money and do all this advertising and do all this and do all that. And what agents have done personally promoted themselves to such a degree, they don't even bring the brand with them. And so when people say, here's the thing, from a consumer standpoint, I can't tell the difference between you, and I can't tell the difference in you, and I can't tell the difference between you. What's the consumer going to do? Who's the cheapest? You're charging 4, you're charging 5, you're charging 6. And if I can for a second, I'll give you an illustration about if you can articulate your value, people will not buy on price. If you can articulate your value, people will not buy on price. And I'll give you an example. Because our business is becoming commoditized. And again, they can get the information now. We had the books and all that stuff. Now they get the information. They got the virtual tours. They know about the schools. They know a whole bunch of stuff. What's the difference? And you're charging 4, you're charging 5, and you're charging 6, and I can't tell the difference. You'd be mad not to go with 4. You have to be able to articulate it. So I'll give you an example. And a commodity, like what real estate's becoming, is like the coffee business. So here's 2 companies. They're both good companies, and they sell coffee. One is Dunkin' Donuts, and one's Starbucks. Do you have anybody from the Northeast here? All right. A Dunkin' Donuts is really Northeast. It's kind of sit down, shut up, drink your coffee type of company. Okay? So you walk in there, what do you want? And it's small, medium, large. You sit on plastic chairs. You listen to the radio. And a cup of coffee costs you $1.50. Drink it, get the hell out of here. It's very New England. Okay? Now, a different company, another good company, they do real well. Different company, Starbucks. So Starbucks, this bean was picked out of the rear end of a monkey this morning. They don't have small, medium, large. They have tall. Tall. You and I are small, but when we go, we're tall. We go. I get self-esteem when I go to Starbucks. You're tall. You have tall, you have grande, you have venti, beautiful. They don't give you a styrofoam cup. They give you this ecologically processed cup with a little Java jacket, so your fingertippies don't get burned. Is that right? Okay, and then you sit in furniture, nicer than the stuff you have in your house, and you listen to jazz. Okay, and a cup of coffee costs about $1,300. Okay, it's disclosure. They're a full disclosure company. The name of the company, Starbucks. We're going to stick it to you. But here's the thing. It's the same frickin' coffee bean. But these guys articulate their value, and Americans, this is an amazing country. They stand in line at 6 in the morning. They bring their own cups to pay a mortgage for a cup of coffee. These guys articulate their value. Nobody's in here going, hey, Dunkin' Donuts is selling it cheaper. Are you guys hearing me? Some of you bring Starbucks quality expertise, Starbucks quality experience, and Starbucks quality service, and you are articulating Dunkin' Donuts value. And you're competing with agents that are Dunkin' Donut agents. And you need to be able to articulate your value. Okay? If I'm a Remax agent, if you got the 800-pound gorilla, you got to bring the 800-pound gorilla on the appointment with you. Hey, nobody sells more homes than us. Hey, this and that, and here's what we do, and here's what we do, and here's how we do it. We're the best trained agents. We're the highest production agents. You know, there's a reason why other companies don't show their production. So you got to know your value. You got to know your local brokerage. Here's the value to my office. the people in my office, the broker in my office, the manager, you got to be able to articulate that in about 2 or 3 sentences. And you got to be able to articulate in 2 or 3 sentences the value of the brand. You do that, you're going to walk in on an appointment, you're going to get a full price list, you're going to get the right listing, you're going to get full price commission, you're going to walk out the door because they said value, just walked out the door. Okay? And then you're Starbucks. Okay?
Actually, I would just take you on the listing appointment with me.
That'd be good. That'd be good. And you'd cash the check. That's the problem.
Yes, I would. What do you tell your Remax coaching clients that you can't tell your clients with other brands?
You are always trying to get me in trouble, aren't you?
We don't want you to coach anybody else unless you're training them to move over here.
So last year, our average Remax agent made $302,000. And so, it's already a very high average at 105. So Remax agents tend to be a little more, how can I say it, a little more red meat eating. In the sales culture, less vegetarians. And so they fight us, they're free spirits. Okay, when we're coaching a Remax agent, we have to coach them in such a way they think it's their idea. That's one of the tips. You know that. And then the second thing is they like to be pushed. They say they don't, but they actually like to be pushed. And you have a fairly ambitious group who are quite interested in success, and you've kind of modeled your own company after yourself. You've attracted a lot of people like yourself. And it's a lot of fun to coach Remax agents, I'll tell you that. Good stuff.
So, final question, and we'll let them go have a cocktail.
Uh-oh.
I was amazed to find out that your company, and we have a long history together, has trained over 3 million agents in 37 countries. What are you telling them that it truly takes an agent to do to succeed in 2015?
Sure. And I thank you for all your support over the years, and it's been a pleasure. Many of the countries we've been to have been on behalf of Remax, too. If I can give you this, I really think this is key. You hear lots of different stuff. You come to conventions, so on and so forth. We've been at it 20 years. We've seen a lot of people. Typical sales agent with NAR last year made $35,000. So sales agent with NAR made $35,000.
But I have to correct the statistic.
Yeah.
They don't tell you, but in the fine print, that's only looking at agents who had been full-time for 5 years.
Wow. So the part-timers and losers aren't in that statistic?
No.
Wow. I need to start having a different stat now on top of everything else, as well as a new training program. So that's good. So I think there's 3 things. And again, we've spent time, I've come and spent days with you and picked your brain, and you've been a great influence on my business. But these dynamics, I think there's 3 things. If you picture a triangle, there's 3 things you got to be working on. First is mindset. And mindset is how you think and what you believe. You got to work on that stuff. How you think. I came to a Remax convention in 1991, and I met a guy named Joe Nego, who's a Remax agent here. And Joe Nego at the time was selling 200 homes a year. I was selling 80. I had a very high average sales price. He had a low average sales price. We met, we connected at a conference like this. We became buddies. We stayed in touch. And over time, he challenged my thinking. Because at 80, I was the big dog in my office in my area. But I now met a guy who was selling 200, and he was thinking differently than I was. I was selling a much higher average sales price than him, and I was able to influence him. So he ended up selling less homes and making more money by raising his average sales price. I ended up selling more homes and maintaining my average sales price by changing the way I think. You're reading the books, going to the classes. So you got to be, what do you think, how do you think, and what do you believe? What do you believe about yourself inside? What do you believe about your opportunity? Do you believe you can actually go and be very successful? Can you become the most successful person in your family? Can you become the most successful person in your town? And can you believe that about yourself, that you have the goods? The second thing is motivation, the second part of the triangle. You got to have motivation. And people knock motivation. And our old friend, Zig Ziglar, he was the king of motivation, and people would take shots at him all the time. And he would say, people criticize me because motivation doesn't last. But he goes, neither does bathing. Okay, and so that's why you got to do it all the time. And here's the thing: you got to stay up. Real estate's a tough business, and the transactions are tough. Business is tough, and working by yourself is tough. You got to have the juice to sell this business. We're not morticians, for the love of Mary. We got to have the juice. We got to walk in the door and go, hey, how you doing? This thing's going to sell. And they go, really? You betcha. And you got to bring the juice. Is that right? You can't walk in, oh. I don't know. This thing's a bit of a wolf. Market's bad. You got to stay motivated. And then the third thing is you got to have some methodologies. What do you do with your day? How you do your day? And I think if you got to have all three. If you have the motivation and you don't have the methodology, you're going to be all jacked up and you're going to be broke. Okay? And if you just do methodologies but you don't have the motivation, you won't have the energy to do it. So mindset, motivation, methodologies. You work on those three things. You wrap yourself around this brand. You wrap yourself into your broker's value and your own value. I think you're going to do just fine. All right.
So our time together over the last 20 years has been fascinating to me. I've learned so much from you.
Likewise.
And you have given so much to our organization. You've affected so many lives.
Appreciate it.
And so we hope you guys go out and get a whole bunch of motivation and education this week. But let's give Brian a hand, and thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thank you. All right, be good. Only 2 drinks.
Okay, thank you so much.
I'm back inside.